All right, everyone. Welcome to Change with Ted Williams. Remember, change starts with you. As you guys know, we have been doing this conversation here for some time now, really since the beginning of the pandemic, just sort of getting out and kind of talking about these issues. I had done this show for a while through the CAN TV network in Chicago, and before that was doing WYCC in Chicago as well. And really, my goal is to really create a space and platform for us to really become change agents, social change, um, looking at community change, individual change. I think all of those things are extremely important. And so, for a while, we were doing this on Saturday evenings and during the middle of the COVID crisis, and things sort of started opening up a little bit. And so, as a result, just decided to move this a little earlier to the 11 o'clock hour here on Saturdays. And so, very excited to do that, and hope that you guys will watch and join us as we talk about the issues that are relevant and prevalent in our world today and how we evoke change, right? Because a lot of people talk about problems, but I really want to spend time not only looking at problems, but also talking about what are the solutions that we need to affect change in local community, in the national community, and that sort of thing. And so I am super excited about that and very excited that we can have this conversation. So, joining me today is going to be a good friend of mine. His name is Robert Montgomery, and he is the executive director of the Urban Muslim Minority Alliance. And we're going to talk about U.S. housing, and we're going to talk about inequality in America, which I think are huge, huge issues that need to be addressed at in a very significant way. And so I'm just dealing with a little bit of a technical thing here, trying to make sure I've got everything I needed technically. So just give me 1 second here. But I want to say, man, this is a really, really crazy time in our world. And it is so crazy because we are now facing unemployment. 40 million people, right? 40 million people are unemployed in this country right now. 40 million. And when you think about what that all means, what it means is that when we're looking at how people are going to make a living, how they're going to survive, guys, we are in significant, significant trouble. And so I want to bring a little perspective to this. It's funny because I did a video earlier this week about this question of what I call pandemic profiteering, right? Where you have companies who are making billions of dollars more than they were before the pandemic. So there are 17 out of the top 21 corporations in America that have made $85 billion more in profit than they were at this time last year, which means that really, to no credit to them, if you will, they just happen to be in the right place at the right time. These are companies that recognize that people are starving or they're suffering, and as a result, they are profiting off of the suffering of other people. And now, don't get me wrong, profit works in America. That's kind of how the American system works, and we know this, and that's okay. I am not only an educator, but I'm also a businessman, and so I understand that profit is important. We have to have profit in this nation. I got no problem with profit. But what I do have a problem with is the idea or principle that you would be in a situation where you would make more money off of someone if we are in a crisis. And that is kind of what is happening right now. And so if you think about this, I can tell you, for instance, that we looked at this issue in World War II, right? And during World War II, what was going on was that there were companies that were profiting from the fact that people were at war. And yet the president at the time, President Roosevelt, said that if you are profiting off of this war, then what needs to happen is that you need to pay taxes on that money. Okay. This is a principle in American government for years. And so what you saw in that was that companies who made at that time over $25,000 more than they were making before, then they had to pay up to 94 cents on every dollar above $25,000 at that time. They had to pay it back in taxes. This principle existed all the way through to Lyndon Johnson, where that principle went down to 74 cents on every dollar. But the principle clearly was that if you're going to make a ton of money, then you ought to be paying taxes on that. And so, ladies and gentlemen, we're really in a situation right now where the rich are getting richer in this country. American inequality is really at record levels. There are a ton of studies that have shown that inequality has always existed in this country, but what you see post 1970 is an exacerbation of inequality, an exacerbation of the gap between those who have and those who do not have. And so we got to talk about it, right? We got to talk about how do we go forward? How do we make a difference for people across this world? Now, I want to throw in just a quick bit of information for everybody. We have this show coming up, and my work is equal parts political commentator, teacher, educator, and artist. And what we're doing on August the 20th is we are doing 1619, The Journey of a People, which is a new musical that I wrote and have been performing for about a year now. We're going to be doing that at the DuSable Museum for a virtual audience. So please, you got to get your tickets, folks. If you don't have tickets for the show, you're going to be missing out. You know, I know a lot of folks were excited about Hamilton and getting their Hamilton tickets and things like that, and I'm all down for Hamilton. I love Hamilton, but you got to support 1619 as well, folks. This is really, I'm hoping this will be I'm hoping to have something that is really life-changing and significant for people, right? Really life-changing and making a difference in people's lives. And so I just, I think it's very, very important for us to do that. So now, having said all that, I am trying to share this thing, but it's oh, here it is. Okay, cool. I got it. Yay. Okay, cool. All right. So my Facebook is actually working right. Yay. Okay, cool. All right. Now, all right, now, ladies and gentlemen, we're gonna do a little quiz. I got to talk a little bit, but I want to do a little quiz. So, something you guys who are watching, I want you to. This is interactive, so you are going to in the chat box answer questions about the news and what's been happening in the last week in the news. So, are you ready for this? Now, I don't know if we got a ton of folks watching yet. This is our first week. I didn't even announce the time, but I'm going to set it up for next week. We'll start doing Saturday morning again. But if you want to play. You can kind of hop in. So I'm going to ask a couple of questions about what is going on in current events right now. And so I want you to answer them in the chat box. So here we go. Over a dozen players on which Major League Baseball team tested positive for coronavirus this week? Over a dozen players on which major baseball team tested positive for coronavirus this week? Was it the Baltimore Orioles, the Miami Marlins, the New York Yankees, the New York Yankees, or the Philadelphia Phillies? So you got the Baltimore Orioles, Miami Marlins, New York Yankees. Why can't I talk today? I don't know why. New York Yankees or the Philadelphia Phillies. If you know the answer to that, please put it in the chat box. Now, I was giving away prizes and stuff the last time we were doing this, but I don't know if I'm gonna do that now. I took about 3 weeks off on this because we had just a bunch of stuff happening. But we're getting ready for the show, and I'm really excited about it, and I want to make sure that we're re-engaging again. So if I want to pop an answer to that, if you know dozen players who tested positive for coronavirus, please throw that in there. If you happen to know the answer, go ahead now. Okay, let's see if I can get anybody there or whatever. It's okay. It's not that difficult actually. I'm gonna give you guys a couple seconds to see if we got anything going here out there, and if not, we're gonna go ahead and move on. Okay, all right, guys. The answer is the Marlins. The Marlins. So please, yes, check that out. So what's happening in the world, guys, is that America is leading the world in the coronavirus in a bad way, and so we see the president who gets on TV and talks about what is going on around the coronavirus, and we see that very clearly that the United States is 15 times has 15 times the infection rate that they have in Canada and 12 times the infection rate that they have in the UK, and that's per capita, folks. So per capita is 1 per every 100,000 people in this situation. We have 15 times the rate that the Canadians have. We have 12 times the rate that the UK has. We are leading the world in this virus. And I would make the argument very clearly that the reason why we're leading the world in this virus is because of the principle of federalism in America, the principle of every man for himself. Now, what is federalism? Federalism is a division of powers between the federal, state, and local governments. What happens in the United States, ladies and gentlemen, is that the federal government and the state governments have a division of powers. So, if you are a president that is more conservative leaning, you're going to suggest that the states ought to be able to deal with these issues themselves. But if you are a president that is more liberal, I guess, right, or more leaning towards what would be a federalist position, then you are going to suggest that the federal government ought to be engaged and ought to save lives, et cetera, where it can. Well, we're dealing right now with a president that has really left the COVID-19 response to the states. And what you're seeing as a result, ladies and gentlemen, is state after state, different situations, schools trying to figure out what they're going to do, communities trying to figure out what they're going to do. You are seeing a situation in which really in America, it is every man for himself, survival of the fittest. And ladies and gentlemen, this is the number one reason I believe why the United States is leading in this. People could make the argument, oh, we've got immigration, it happened, we got so many people. Guys, it is very clear that we have not had a consistent national response on the coronavirus crisis. And as a result of not having a consistent national response, we are suffering the consequences of this notion of federalism, this notion of, I would say, conservatism. Please forgive me, my conservative friends. In fact, ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to say this very clearly. I used to be very conservative myself, by the way, and I'm not completely unconservative in certain areas. But what I recognize is that in times of crisis, you need the government to step in. There's an old saying that says there are no atheists in foxholes. I don't think there are any real libertarians or conservatives in times of crisis. When the government can step up and help people, it needs to step up and help people. And that is what we're talking about. And so what you're seeing right now is not only a physical crisis, but you are seeing an economic crisis as well. 40 million people unemployed. You look at the moratorium on evictions that is ending, has ended. You're looking at the extension of unemployment, $600 additional a week that has ended this week. And you're seeing record numbers of unemployment, record numbers of people who are falling through the cracks. And ladies and gentlemen, this is a big deal. Let me give you a couple statistics to think about. For households with less than $35,000, 58% of them reported in early July that they had at least one person that experienced a loss of income during this crisis. What you're seeing is, these numbers, I'll show you a couple in a second, but what's happening is that people who are most at risk are the ones who are suffering the most in this situation. The Federal Reserve just reported that 37% of households have insufficient cash to cover a $400 emergency expense, guys. People are really, really living on the edge when it comes to this crisis. And also, here's another statistic that I think is quite interesting on this, that 20% of renters didn't make their payments last month, right? And for communities of color, that number is actually over 30%. Why is this critical? Because in America, when mainstream America gets a cold, minority communities get pneumonia. When mainstream white America gets a cold, minorities get pneumonia. And so part of my work through what we're doing here, through 1619, which is coming on August 20th, as I said, is to really push the idea that if America does not work for all of its people, it does not work. And too long, people of color, too long, communities that have been marginalized historically are falling behind. And it is critical, ladies and gentlemen, that we create a nation that works for all people. We are literally 243 years old as a country. Very, very young country, ladies and gentlemen. 243 years old. And yet, if you think about that, it is a situation where we have such a long, long way to go in living up to the principles that were laid out on paper, July of 1776. We celebrate the nation's independence in that way. And we are now in 2020. And many of those principles, the principle of equality for all, The principle that, as Thomas Jefferson wrote, we hold these truths to be self-evident that all men are created equal, are endowed by their creator with certain unalienable rights. Among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And when you look at what has happened in the last 243 years, you can make the case that we haven't even gotten started and extending full equality to all American citizens. I love what Barack Obama said the other day at John Lewis's funeral, that he is one of the founding fathers of a new America, of a new equal America, right? Of an America that really extends these principles to everybody. And so that is the work that has to be done. And we've got a long way to go, folks. And every one of you, no matter what space that you're in life, you can be a part of this. You can, in education, don't get me started on education. The fact that these schools are, my goodness, opening up in a very dangerous way. But if you're in education, you can be a part of the solution. If you're in law enforcement, you can be a part of the solution. If you're in business, you can be a part of the solution. If you are in, you name it, you can be a part of this solution. And so it is so important that we educate ourselves and that we are inspired to go and make a difference for other people in their lives. And so I commit myself to this work. I commit myself to not only being a voice of education in this space, a voice of inspiration, but also we got to get out and do work, folks, right? So all of us who have the ability to get out, and whether it is mentoring people, whether it's cleaning up the community, whether it is, helping to, I don't know, you name it, give out food, clothing, shelter. These are the things that have to be done. And I say this all the time on videos. I'm a person of faith. It is faith that pushes that. It is faith that allows for that. And I think that when I see faith being hijacked by people who are not pushing the principles of justice and the principles of equality, it is heartbreaking, folks. And so I am a firm believer that we have got to fight in that way. So my buddy Rob was supposed to come on, but I think I missed him. My son took my phone, ladies and gentlemen. Those of you guys who are parents, you understand this. My son took my phone. I was trying to contact my buddy Rob. I don't know what happened. I cannot stop on the broadcast and run upstairs and go find my phone. So it looks like you guys are just stuck with me for a few more minutes. But I really want to make sure that people are aware of what is going on in this country. It is interesting because Joe Biden this last week said that Donald Trump was our first racist president, right? Our first racist president. And ladies and gentlemen, if you don't understand America, you don't understand that what Joe Biden did was so drastically off and tone deaf that I think that it has really dampened some support within, I think, communities of color, I think, the Democratic electorate around what people are doing to kind of get behind him in that kind of way, because it is clear that Joe Biden, right, is not sort of the ideal Democratic candidate. And yet he's the person that is the only thing standing between the United States, Trump, for 4 more years and a different direction, different vision. So a lot of people are going to vote for him. I'm going to vote for Joe Biden because even though I don't necessarily agree with him on a bunch of stuff either, you weigh, unfortunately, in this nation, the lesser of two evils, and that is kind of where we are. And so I think that when we look at these things, we've got to press politicians. In politics, there are no permanent friends, no permanent enemies, only permanent interests. And we have got to press people. We got to press them to do right by others. We have to press them to do right by marginalized communities. And ladies and gentlemen, I'm a believer in this nation. I really, really am. I believe that the principles on paper are so good that even though our practices have been bad, that we still can work towards getting there. I think that we got to have hope. Hope is we don't have hope, we have nothing. So when we look at, Biden, and we look at Obama, Lord have mercy. We look at Biden, we look at Trump. I did not mistake Trump and Obama. I did not confuse those two. That was something different. When we look at them, we recognize, ladies and gentlemen, that both of these candidates are horribly flawed. The question becomes, which direction do you want the country to go into? Do you want the country to continue in a direction in which it is really a Darwinian sense of survival, as we've seen in this pandemic? 150,000 people dead. States told to figure it out for themselves. Schools told to figure it out for themselves. Parents told to figure it out for themselves. Do you want to go forward like that? Or do you want a vision of the country that takes responsibility for people who are suffering and struggling, and we have some sense of collectivism in our nation? That's really what we're dealing with. We're not looking at whether these candidates are perfect. We're not looking at whether Joe Biden has not said some racist stuff, because he has. We're not looking at whether he's gonna pick, a woman, he said, but a woman of color or whatever. We're not looking at those things, right? We're looking at essentially a president right now who has said very clearly that he wants to move the election because he does not believe that the election will be done fairly and justly. Ladies and gentlemen, this is tyrannical. This is tyrannical. And so we have got to make a decision on these issues. We may not get idea what we want, right? Many people want healthcare for everyone. People want a new America. They want an America in which we're not struggling with this issue of eviction. We're not leading the world, the industrialized world, in gun violence, right? We're not leading the world, the industrialized world, in lack of access to healthcare. We're not leading the world in a lot of childhood diseases, right? That should not be indicative of a first world nation. But I'm telling you right now that we better vote, right? We better pay attention. And as I told you, I'm a person of faith. We better pray. We better vote and pay attention and move forward so that we make a practical decision, not an ideal decision, but a practical decision to move towards an America that works for all. So anyway, I'm going to actually come back and do this again. We're probably going to start doing this a number of days throughout the week, in all honesty. I'll bring Rob on maybe on Monday or something like that. But I just want to tell you guys that I am really inserting myself as much as possible to be an agent of change. And I want to work with people who are in that same space, whether it be economic change and us really building an economy that works for various people. One of the things I'm very unapologetic about is that I do have a business. My business is performing arts and education. And yes, my work is to not only elevate myself, but to elevate my community as we use the economy that exists in this country, right? As a person of color, as an artist, it is important to me that we have agency in that space and that we're able to own the culture that comes out of these communities. It's very, very critical to me. So I'm unapologetic in that. I'm unapologetically a person of faith, right? And so I have a house church, a virtual house church that we do every Sunday at 12:30. Please join us if you're interested. We talk about a variety of issues that are faith-centric, faith-based, but really have tentacles in other spaces. So if you are interested in being involved in a ministry and engaged in justice and arts, come see me. Come engage with us. Come visit on Zoom. You can keep your camera off if you really don't want to be involved and you want to kind of stick your foot in there. I'm totally fine with that. But we've got to, I believe, push these communities forward, and we got to push them forward, I think, with the sense of hope that really only comes from faith in that way. And so unapologetic in that way. At Kennedy King College, we're educating folks. We're trying to bring people to a sense where college is affordable for them and college is accessible for them, and that knowledge that is so powerful can be had by many people. And so not only Kennedy King, we're doing this. We have a course called 1619 that we're finishing this week, an online course. It is so important that we hit these things on various fronts. Malcolm X said famously, I cannot fight these battles on one front, but I must fight them on all fronts. So anyway, I hope you guys join the battle. Hope if you're in the battle, man, you're encouraged, right? And we connect in some way, shape, or form. It is so important that people who are trying to do what's right connect and encourage each other, guys, because there's a lot of darkness out here. But hear me clearly as we close out today. There's a lot of darkness in the world, but darkness cannot stand the powerful, phenomenal force of light. If you are in a dark room and you light a small match, no matter how big that dark room is, that little tiny match, a little tiny light will be seen wherever you are. That's what we have to be in this world. I hope that you will join us in being change agents. I hope that you will be encouraged in the change work that you're doing. I hope that you will be inspired. I hope that I can support you. You can support me. Whatever. But I do hope that we, as a community, as a nation, will begin to believe in what this place could be, right? And not look at it as it is. Have a great day, everybody. Take care. I will see you guys on Monday. Bye bye. Got to figure out how to get out of this. I kind of messed myself up. Okay, cool. All right. Take care, everyone. Bye bye.